Joanna stood in the kitchen, coffee growing cold in her hands, eyes locked on the glowing tablet screen. A message sat open, sent from someone saved as V with a heart emoji. This incompetent will finally embarrass herself. After this deal, I'm done with her. Her heart pounded as she scrolled up, revealing months of messages between her husband Miles and his assistant Victoria, plans to force her out of their company, mocking her work, even discussing life after the divorce. And tomorrow? The Gravora pitch meeting she'd spent 6 months perfecting. She heard footsteps on the stairs. Quickly, she replaced the tablet and turned to the sink. Miles wrapped his arms around her, his voice warm. "Everything okay down here?" She smiled, hiding the storm behind her eyes. Perfect. Just thinking about tomorrow. What he didn't know, she was already 2 steps ahead. "My name is Joanna, strategist, co-founder of Thornland Analytics, and the woman my husband Miles tried to erase until he drank from the wrong cup. Ever watch someone try to sabotage your career, only to destroy their own instead? 8 years ago, Joanna Wilks and Miles Thornland were just 2 dreamers in a cramped Portland apartment with secondhand furniture, a shared laptop, and a vision they believed in. They launched Thornland Analytics with nothing but drive and determination. Joanna was the strategist. She handled the data, the analysis, the proposals. Her mind was built for precision, numbers, forecasts, scalable solutions. Miles was the face of the business, charming, confident, a natural in a room full of executives. His ability to connect with clients opened doors, and Joanna's brilliance closed deals. Together, they were unstoppable. Their marriage grew alongside their company. Business wins were celebrated with pizza on the couch. Setbacks were endured hand in hand. When the recession hit, they cut their salaries, downsized their lifestyle, and worked twice as hard. They made it through, stronger, or so Joanna believed. Over the years, they'd built a solid reputation in the consulting world. Clients respected their synergy. They were seen as a power couple, both in business and in life. But in the past year, the balance started to shift. Miles began working late more often. Client dinners stretched past midnight. He took more solo business trips than usual, and when Joanna asked about them, his answers were vague. Then there was Victoria, his assistant, young, efficient, always available. Joanna wanted to believe the late nights and last-minute travel were just signs of a growing business, nothing more. But deep down, her instincts whispered something else. It started with a hotel receipt she found tucked in a folder, $300, 0 cents, for a Wednesday night stay at a boutique hotel across town, then another for diamond earrings from a store Joanna didn't shop at. She tried to rationalize it. Maybe he bought them for her birthday and forgot to surprise her. But her birthday came and went. No jewelry, no explanation. She didn't confront him, not yet. Instead, she poured herself into their latest opportunity, a high-stakes pitch to Gravora Group, one of the largest private equity firms in the region. Winning the Gravora deal would change everything. It would put Thornland Analytics on the national stage. Joanna took the lead on strategy, crafting the proposal from the ground up. She studied Gravora's history, dissected their business model, ran deep circle analysis, and mapped out a comprehensive operational overhaul. She stayed up until 3 a.m. most nights, fine-tuning slides, running simulations, double-checking projections. Despite the growing distance between them, she still believed they were working toward the same goal. She still saw them as partners, so when Miles praised her efforts, brought her coffee in the mornings, and smiled like everything was fine, she clung to the illusion. Because that's what you do when your heart's still invested, even when the evidence starts piling up. Then came the moment that changed everything. A forgotten tablet, a glowing screen, a message from Victoria, mocking Joanna's efforts, laughing about the plan to push her out, plotting a future where she was no longer part of the company she'd built from nothing. That text message didn't just break her heart, it shattered every illusion she'd held onto. But Joanna didn't cry. She didn't scream. She didn't confront. She simply smiled, filed it all away, and made her decision. If Miles thought she'd go down quietly, he didn't know her at all. The moment Joanna read the words, She has no clue that tomorrow's the day I get rid of the dead weight. Something inside her snapped into clarity. The message from V. Victoria glared from Miles's tablet screen like a cruel spotlight on betrayal. There were dozens more. Flirty exchanges, vacation plans, intimate jokes about Joanna's work ethic, calling her a scrambling background figure. He had told Victoria that once the Gravora deal was locked in, he'd push Joanna out completely and restructure the company. He even claimed he was the real brains behind everything Thornland had accomplished. Joanna's name wasn't even mentioned with respect. But Joanna didn't scream. She didn't cry. She didn't even let her face change. When Miles came downstairs minutes later, asking if she wanted tea, she smiled. "Sure," she said sweetly. "Let me finish cleaning up first." She placed the tablet exactly where she found it, as if she hadn't just witnessed the unraveling of her marriage and professional identity. She kissed him goodnight and let him think everything was exactly as he planned. The next morning, her first call was to Rebecca Hayes, a trusted divorce attorney she had collaborated with on previous client matters. "Rebecca, it's Joanna. I need to see you today. It's urgent." Her voice was calm, measured, but beneath it surged something colder than rage. Strategy. She outlined the betrayal, requested a full review of business assets, and began preparing legal protections. Next, she contacted their accountant and requested copies of all company records, income contributions, ownership filings, intellectual property rights, and all expenses tied to both business and personal accounts. Joanna took screenshots of every incriminating message, every time Miles joked about her, every insult, every detail about their secret plans. Then she backed them up in multiple secure folders. Finally, she downloaded a voice recording app and started capturing every interaction related to the Gravora pitch. Miles, unaware, continued on like nothing had changed. He still smiled, still kissed her cheek, still handed her coffee each morning like the doting business partner. Only now, Joanna was preparing for war. The night before the pitch, Joanna stayed up reviewing the slides for the 100th time. She adjusted nothing. Everything was perfect. But she did make one important change to her morning routine. She prepared 2 matching black mugs, the same his and hers mugs they'd bought during their honeymoon in Italy. She brewed coffee just the way he liked it, dark roast, no sugar. Then she left them on the counter, side by side. At 9 a.m. sharp, Miles came downstairs, confident and composed. "Big day," he said, reaching for the mugs. "Drink up." "I will," Joanna smiled, watching him take his first sip. But just before the Gravora meeting began, while Miles was in the bathroom, she calmly switched the mugs. The presentation hadn't even started yet, and the man who thought he held all the power had just swallowed the first taste of his own downfall. While Miles sipped his morning coffee, completely unaware he was drinking from the wrong cup, Joanna was already several moves ahead. He thought today was the day she would embarrass herself. What he didn't realize was that everything was already set by her. While he was humming to himself and checking his hair in the hallway mirror, Joanna opened her laptop in the home office and uploaded their Gravora Group presentation to a secured cloud folder, separate from the one Miles used. And she opened a second app, one discreetly recording video and audio from her phone, placed strategically behind a decorative bookend on the shelf. Next, she composed a carefully worded email addressed to Harrison Webb, Gravora's CEO. She thanked him for the opportunity to present and expressed excitement about the meeting. Then she subtly added, "I look forward to walking you through our strategic recommendations today. It's been a privilege to design this solution from the ground up." She didn't hint at anything wrong, but she made it clear she was the architect behind the pitch. While Miles reviewed the opening slides, Joanna was already calling their accountant under the guise of checking quarterly financials. "I need documentation confirming my personal contributions, financial, intellectual property, and client development. Please itemize every project I've led or solely developed." The accountant didn't ask questions. Joanna had always been the more methodical of the two. Her voice stayed steady, even as her plan unfolded. Then came the final piece. She logged into her private business banking portal and opened a new account under her own name, tied to a separate LLC she'd quietly registered months ago, just in case. She transferred every dollar she could legally justify as hers, retained earnings from clients she'd landed, funds from a speaking engagement Miles hadn't attended, and her portion of IP licensing. It wasn't everything, but it was enough to prove she wasn't dependent on him. That Thornland Analytics wasn't just his company, it was hers too. She checked the time. 10:15. 15 minutes before the Gravora presentation. Miles was still upstairs, talking to Victoria on the phone. She could hear his voice through the thin walls, laughing as if today were a celebration. Maybe for him it was, but for Joanna, it was the beginning of the end. For him, she closed her laptop, picked up the coffee mugs again just to be sure, and placed hers in front of his chair. The one he'd been drinking from? That now sat in front of her screen. He came downstairs in his navy suit, all charm and swagger. "Everything ready?" he asked. "Completely," Joanna replied, smiling. Because it was. Every file saved, every account documented, every conversation recorded, every exit planned. Miles thought he was about to take the lead on the biggest pitch of their careers. Joanna knew better. She wasn't just prepared for this meeting, she was prepared for the moment he would fall apart. And she wasn't going to stop it. She was going to watch. At exactly 10:30 a.m., the Gravora Group video call connected. Joanna and Miles sat side by side in their polished home office, both looking sharp on camera. Harrison Webb, Gravora's CEO, appeared in the center window, flanked by COO Jennifer Coleman, Head of Business Development Thomas Rivera, and 3 potential investors from major firms. The stakes couldn't have been higher. This wasn't just another pitch, it was the gateway to a national partnership worth millions. Miles opened confidently, greeting everyone with a smile that tried too hard to be effortless. "Thank you for this opportunity," he said. "Joanna and I have crafted something truly special for Gravora's growth trajectory." He emphasized, "Joanna and I," positioning himself as the leader, just like in the messages she'd read. His hand reached for the coffee mug in front of him. Joanna's original cup, now filled with what he had planned for her. The first few slides went fine. He outlined the market landscape, identified operational pain points, and nodded as Gravora's execs responded with polite interest. But by slide 3, something changed. Miles blinked hard and stumbled slightly over a phrase. "Our projections indicate an 18% increase through Joanna remained perfectly still, her expression calm, pleasant, professional. Inside, she was watching years of deceit collapse in real time. And by slide 5, Miles was struggling to finish full sentences. His words were slurred, his eyes glassy. He lost his place mid-slide, blinked at the screen like he couldn't process what was in front of him. Harrison leaned forward, his expression shifting from polite interest to wary concern. Jennifer exchanged a glance with one of the investors. Joanna saw the ripple of discomfort move through the group. She leaned in gently. "Would you like me to step in here, Miles?" she asked sweetly. He shook his head. No, I'm fine. Just tired. Big day, you know." His laugh was strained. He reached to advance the slide and accidentally clicked out of the presentation altogether. The screen went black. "I've got it," Joanna said smoothly, already sharing her screen. She reloaded the presentation flawlessly and picked up where he'd left off. "As I was saying, Gravora's current operational silos reduce your agility and competitive decision-making. Our plan addresses this with a 3-phase implementation model, customized for your internal structure." Her voice was calm, clear, commanding. She walked them through projections, implementation phases, accountability protocols, and measurable milestones. With each slide, the tension on the call began to fade. Harrison nodded, visibly impressed. Joanna was clearly in charge, and she was brilliant. Behind her, Miles sat slumped in his chair, blinking slowly, clearly trying to recover, but failing miserably. Every time he tried to speak, Joanna guided the conversation smoothly forward. She made no mention of his condition. She was poised, professional, graceful under pressure. By the final slide, Gregora's entire panel was engaged. Questions came quickly about cost modeling, rollout timelines, long-term support. Joanna answered each one with precision. It was clear this was her project, her vision, her leadership. Harrison smiled. Mrs. Wilks, this is some of the most comprehensive strategic thinking we've seen. Thank you. Not you both, not the team, just her. Miles tried one final time to speak. We can start as early as... He paused, then blinked. He looked lost. Jennifer leaned toward her mic. We'll be in touch with next steps, but I think we know who we'll be calling. The screen faded to black. Joanna sat back, her expression serene. Miles didn't say a word. Because he finally understood, he'd planned to cut her out. But she'd already replaced him. By the time Miles dragged himself upstairs and collapsed onto their bed, Joanna was already drafting the email that would sever the final thread tying them together professionally. She sat at her desk, calm and deliberate, the afternoon light casting long shadows across the floor. Her fingers moved over the keyboard with quiet precision. Dear Mr. Webb, she began. Thank you for the opportunity to present to Gravora Group today. I want to follow up personally regarding the unexpected developments during our meeting. This morning's events have made me realize I need to address some personal matters that could affect our professional dynamic moving forward. Please rest assured my commitment to the success of your project remains absolute. I'm available at your convenience to discuss next steps and ensure continuity. She hit send, then leaned back in her chair. The trap Miles had set had sprung on him, and now the power was shifting. Less than 2 hours later, Harrison Webb replied. The message was brief, but potent. Joanna, your leadership today was outstanding. I appreciated your professionalism under pressure. Let's schedule a time to discuss terms. Just you. That one line said everything. Miles was no longer part of the conversation. Gravora didn't want the duo. They wanted her, and Joanna intended to deliver. Upstairs, Miles was groggy and confused, still convinced he had food poisoning or a stress-yukti episode. Joanna didn't correct him. She let him believe whatever made him feel safe for now. Meanwhile, she called their accountant. I need a complete breakdown of ownership records for Thornland Analytics, she said. Initial investments, intellectual property contributions, client acquisition logs, everything. This needs to be clean and indisputable. The accountant didn't ask questions. Joanna was always the one who made the real decisions. He simply said, "Give me 48 hours." Next, she met with Rebecca Hayes, her attorney. They sat in Rebecca's office downtown, a sleek glass and wood space filled with sunlight and quiet confidence. Joanna slid a folder across the desk. Inside were screenshots of text messages between Miles and Victoria. Conversations mocking Joanna, plotting her removal, evidence of the affair. More importantly, proof that Miles had referred to her as dead weight and discussed restructuring the company without her knowledge. That's not all, Joanna said, placing her phone beside the folder. This device recorded the entire Gravora meeting, including his initial attempt to take credit for the work and his subsequent... Rebecca listened to a few minutes of audio, then she nodded. We'll file first thing in the morning. Joanna wasn't finished. She forwarded Victoria's messages, the inappropriate late-night banter, the plans to remove Joanna from the business, the mocking remarks, to the professional licensing board that oversaw analysts and consultants in their state. It wasn't revenge, it was accountability. Victoria's reputation collapsed within days. Her name was quietly removed from Thornland's internal site. Clients stopped responding to her. Industry forums began circulating whispers. Meanwhile, Joanna moved swiftly. She had the bank documentation prepared, proved her original seed investment into the company, $60,000, 0 cents from her savings, compared to Miles's 0. She logged the creation dates on every major strategy document in Thornland's client library, all of them traced back to her. By the end of the week, a formal separation agreement was drafted. Rebecca had been masterful. Miles's attorney, after reviewing the evidence, recommended immediate settlement. Within 7 days, Joanna became the sole legal owner of Thornland Analytics. The man who once tried to destroy her, who laughed about her behind her back, who thought he was so clever, so untouchable, had literally and figuratively drunk from the wrong cup. Joanna didn't scream. She didn't threaten. She didn't fall apart. She simply watched, waited, and executed. As Miles sat alone in the guest bedroom days later, reviewing the divorce paperwork with trembling hands, Joanna walked past the open door without looking in. He had lost the company, the contract, the marriage, the future. And all of it was because he'd underestimated the woman who'd built it all. The Gravora Group contract was signed by the end of the week, with Joanna listed as the sole point of contact. No co-founders, no shared responsibilities, just her. And she didn't waste a moment. Within weeks, Thornland Analytics delivered an initial strategy rollout that increased operational efficiency by 22%. Then Gravora reported savings of $3,800,000, 0 cents, in the first phase alone. What was meant to be a pitch that destroyed her credibility turned out to be the launchpad of her legacy. Word of the presentation spread through Portland's business community. Investors who had once only humored Joanna began requesting meetings. Clients who previously deferred to Miles now asked for her personally, her LinkedIn inbox filled with offers and invitations. Her poise during the meeting, her grace under pressure, and the results she delivered made her a quiet legend overnight. Meanwhile, Miles was scrambling. In desperation, he tried to spin the story. He claimed Joanna had drugged him, that she sabotaged his coffee to make him appear incompetent. But the facts told a different story. The toxicology report showed traces of a sedative in his bloodstream, one used accessible and often used for short-term memory suppression. But what sealed his fate were the text messages, the very ones he'd laughed over with Victoria, the ones where he detailed his plan to remove Joanna from the company after the deal was secured. Messages about how she was dead weight and clueless. About how he couldn't wait to celebrate with Victoria. Rebecca Hayes didn't even flinch when Miles's attorney attempted to push back during negotiations. She simply played the meeting recording, pointed to the timestamps, and referenced the substance report. Then she handed over a signed affidavit from the consulting firm's accountant, confirming that Joanna had contributed nearly all of the intellectual property, financial investment, and client strategies used by Thornland Analytics. Miles's attorney reviewed everything in silence. 10 minutes later, he advised Miles to settle immediately. Miles walked away with nothing. No stake in the company. No rights to future earnings. No ownership of the Gravora contract. He left their home with 2 suitcases, a bruised ego, and a legal gag preventing him from discussing the incident in detail. Victoria fared no better. After Joanna forwarded the explicit and inappropriate text messages to her licensing board and Gravor's ethics committee, Victoria was terminated within 48 hours. Her name was quietly removed from all corporate websites. No explanations, just erasure. In a city like Portland, where reputation is currency, she found doors closing faster than she could knock. Joanna, on the other hand, moved fast. She expanded Thornland Analytics, hiring 3 new analysts and opening a satellite office downtown. Her client base doubled within 3 months. She became a keynote speaker at industry events and quietly partnered with 2 local universities to mentor women in business strategy. She didn't broadcast her story. She didn't gloat. But everyone in the industry knew. They whispered about the woman who turned her husband's betrayal into a power move, who let him sabotage himself while she stepped into the spotlight he tried to steal. The betrayal didn't break Joanna. It built her into a strategist no one could overlook, a business force that commanded attention, not with noise, but with results. And the very company Miles tried to steal, it became her empire. Joanna didn't just rebuild her business, she redefined it. With Thornland Analytics thriving under her solo leadership, she decided to expand the company's mission. She launched a new consulting arm, one focused entirely on betrayal-proofing businesses, helping women entrepreneurs protect their intellectual property, secure their finances, and establish legal boundaries from the very beginning. She called it Thorn-Proof Strategies, a quiet nod to the thorns she'd survived. Every Thursday, she hosted virtual workshops for female founders. Her inbox filled with messages from women across the country. Startup founders, nonprofit directors, creative professionals, sharing stories of being pushed out by male co-founders, being erased from their own visions, or having partners attempt to undercut their worth. Joanna listened, advised, and most importantly, taught them how to fight smart. Not loud, not reckless, but with strategy, documentation, and quiet power. Her speaking calendar filled quickly. From Portland tech summits to international business conferences, she took the stage with calm authority. She didn't need to retell the details of what happened with Miles. Instead, she shared frameworks, tools, and insights forged in the fire of her own experience. Behind the scenes, she became a sought-work mentor, especially to women navigating high-stakes partnerships. Nathan, one of their early interns turned trusted analyst, joined her full-time. He'd once been heartbroken watching his mentors fall apart. Now, he worked beside Joanna, leading expansion into new markets and developing training programs for young professionals. Their partnership was built on transparency, mutual respect, and a shared belief. One morning, Joanna received an email from someone unexpected. The sender was Elise, a former colleague of Victoria's. She worked at a mid-sized PR firm and had stumbled across Joanna's story in a business forum. Elise's message was raw. She detailed months of financial manipulation by her business partner, a man who belittled her in meetings, locked her out of shared accounts, and threatened to dissolve their firm without her input. She ended the message with, "I don't know what to do, but I saw what you built, and I had to ask, how did you survive it?" Joanna didn't hesitate. She offered her a free 1-hour session. Not for the publicity, not for the press, but because she remembered that feeling, that sharp mix of betrayal, confusion, and shame. Elise's story was different, but the pain was familiar, and Joanna knew exactly how to help. As they wrapped up the call, Elise said quietly, "I thought I was crazy, but hearing you, I feel sane again." Joanna smiled. "You're not crazy. You're just waking up, and when you do, you take back what's yours." That moment stayed with her, not because it proved how far she'd come, but because it showed her why it all mattered. She hadn't just escaped betrayal. She'd transformed it. Into power. Into purpose. And now, she was handing the blueprint to others. That was real revenge, and it was just getting started. 6 months later, Joanna sat in her corner office, sunlight washing over the Portland skyline behind her. The walls were glass, the view breathtaking, but it was the peace that mattered most. She took a long sip of her coffee, real, strong, and exactly the way she liked it. This time, no second guessing, no hidden agendas, just hers. Her phone buzzed. It was Rebecca. "It's done," Rebecca said simply. "Final divorce settlement is official. You own everything." Joanna let the words settle like the final period on a chapter well written. Thornland Analytics was now 100% hers. Gravora Group remained their largest client, with 2 more major contracts on the table. She had 3 new analysts on staff, and her mentorship program had over 200 women enrolled. Just then, Nathan stepped into the office, holding a printout of their latest performance metrics. "Mom," he said, setting it down with a grin, "that was brilliant." Joanna chuckled, her eyes drifting toward the horizon. "Sometimes the best revenge doesn't scream," she said softly. "It simply succeeds." The room fell quiet, filled only with the hum of possibility. Outside, city lights began to flicker on, casting golden reflections across the windows. And in that quiet moment, she remembered the morning Miles handed her that mug, the smug confidence in his eyes, the certainty that she would crumble. But he was wrong. He hadn't destroyed her. He'd freed her. And from that freedom, she had built an empire, one quiet victory at a time.